Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and earlier, Paulina had a chance to interview a very interesting gentleman. His name is Shawn Michaels, and perhaps you have tracked his career. He's a professional wrestler, and he's authored a book, Wrestling for My Life. I think you'll find Paulina and Shawn's time together to be pretty interesting. Let's join them.
Well, Shawn, congratulations on your new book, Wrestling for My Life. It's out. Where can people find it, first of all?
Well, it's at all bookstores, Barnes & Noble's, Family Christian Bookstores, available to Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. It's in, iBooks, eBooks, Kindles versions. It's, as best I understand, it's darn near everywhere.
Everywhere. Wonderful. Shawn, I know this is not your first book, and you've been very open about your faith, especially after you came back to WWE. And I admire you for being so open about your faith and changing so many lives around you, often indirectly. So I do want to talk about the book, obviously, but I want to kind of go back and maybe start with a simple question, and I hope it's simple. You've had many titles. You've been called Heartbreak Kid, Mr. WrestleMania, Triple H called you Mr. Hall of Fame. You've been a hero, a rebel. Who is Shawn Michaels?
Well, that's okay. Had you asked me 20 years ago, I don't know that I've been able to answer, and I think probably the first thing would have been a wrestler. But first of all, Shawn Michaels is Michael Shawn Hickenbottom. That's who I really am. And I'm the son of my mom and dad. I'm a father and a husband. And honestly, I'm simply just a guy who used to be in the WWE, had a wonderful career, but now is just trying to be a good dad, a good husband. Honestly, that's it. On its surface, it sounds like pretty boring, but to me, it's the greatest and most challenging job I've ever had.
I think anyone who's known even a little bit about you would never say that you or your life is boring, because looking back at your career, it's simply amazing. So what happened in 2002, or maybe several years prior to that? Why such a big change between Shawn Michaels of the 1990s versus what you are now? Well,
it clearly has been my faith. It has been becoming a Christian, being born again. A lot of people give a great deal of credit, which is as they should, to my wife and me having a family. But I do have to say that as much of a positive influence as they've been, it wasn't until I accepted Christ that all the changes, all the real positive, great changes were made in my life, and that just sort of is a testament to, again, the power and again, the miracles that Almighty God does. It's just that simple. He did them 2,000 years ago and still does them today, and He did one in me. And I think that the biggest difference is that I do understand there's an accountability in my life. And I don't know that I ever honestly believed that when I was younger, in those years past. I think I probably felt, my life was my own, and if I'm not hurting anybody, it shouldn't matter. And honestly, when I got saved, I realized that I was a child of God, and there was a plan and a purpose for my life, and to not pursue that would be selling myself and my family and my life short.
Shawn, there are so many misconceptions about pro wrestling, and a lot of people would think a person who becomes Christian would want to leave that kind of business. You, on the other hand, went back to it. Why, and how different was it there being a Christian?
Well, first of all, it was a little bit of a challenge, because I wasn't sure if I should go back, and I asked a lot of people, and there were some people who, oh my goodness, you can't go back into that line of work. And clearly everything ends up in a fight. And that certainly is not the the most Christian thing to do is resolve all of your differences in a fight. But what I realized is that, one, for the most part, we are playing a part. And I also realized that the one thing that I did really, really well, and it was almost effortless, was wrestle. I recognized my ability as an amazing gift, and I just then began to know that I know that I know that God doesn't give those kind of gifts if he doesn't want you to use them. And that was ultimately what made me go back into the WWE. And I also, I always thought of, Jesus saying, take the gospel to everywhere. And I thought to myself, that doesn't mean everywhere except the WWE. That means everywhere. And so I went back with the assurance of again, not wanting to beat anybody over the head with my Bible, but clearly at least show that I was a different person than the man I was before.
When I see you, a few times I saw you come out to the arena once you've already become Christian. You pause, you kneel down, and from what I understand, you pray, right? Or
yes.
you have. What do you ask God before you step into the ring? Unless it's, of course, too personal.
No, honestly, it was almost always started with help. But it was, allow me to glorify you with my work, and to watch over me. And one of the things, it was different every time, but honestly, each time I went into WrestleMania after 2002, I was literally blown away how I continued to have really, really good matches. It was, I got older, the injuries mounted, everything in the natural told me that my performance should be declining, and it never did. And so as time went on, that prayer was just, continue to do with me what you've been doing. Continue to let me perform beyond my abilities and my expectations. And personally, I believe he was unbelievably faithful in that respect, because in my very last match, I was in the main event at WrestleMania, and there isn't anybody that's ever said that he looked like he was losing it. And that certainly is not a testament to me. That's a testament to the Lord's work in me.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to the book that you just authored that is out, Wrestling for My Life by Shawn Michaels. Wrestling for My Life, interesting title. And you were just talking about losing and winning. In this wrestling for your life, are you winning?
Yes, I am winning now. And I think one of the things that I try not to over dramatize my life, but at the same time, there were a number of guys that I used to run around with that are no longer here. And it is not a stretch to believe that I was going down that same road, because I was. And even in the forward, my buddy Triple H writes that one of the things that impacted him most about me coming to Christ was the burden that was lifted off him, as far as always wondering when he'd come down to my hotel room and find out that I wasn't alive. And that's a situation that's happened to many wrestlers in the past. And so I literally was saved in every aspect of the word. And so the title Wrestling for My Life, I think, is a very literal title in respect to the life that I was living.
What are your goals right now?
My goals now are pretty simple. They are to continue to try to be a good husband, a good father, continue to try to continue to seek God's plan and allow him to guide me through my life. One of the things I pray on a regular basis is, allow me to walk through the doors that you open. I don't want to be forcing any doors open in my life. And so I continue to try to grow as a husband, as a father, continue to grow as a man. And I think those are probably, I guess, as I've said, previously, in many people's eyes, they might not be the loftiest of goals, but if you truly try to attain them, they're pretty challenging, and that's certainly what I'm trying to do.
Wrestling for My Life, your newest book, is a personal story, of course. It's autobiography, but you also make some observations, some notes about the society's expectation of men, and you just talked about your role as a father, as a husband, as a man. Do you think our society is too feminized? Do you think it's a struggle for men to be men now?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's definitely it's politically correct, feminized, whatever terms anybody wants to put on it. If you stand for something, you're seen as as a hard right guy or I don't know, hard anything. You're seen as difficult. It's not a positive reflection. And I think, again, I understand that it's a very tight rope to walk at the same time. But again, Jesus did it. Jesus was he was very compassionate, very loving, but at the same time, you can read in Scripture, there are plenty of times when he's blasting his disciples about their lack of faith and again, getting into them for not doing the right thing. And I think anytime we as men are seen as chastising or hard on anybody, all of a sudden we're not good Christians. And that's not always necessarily the case. One of the attributes, in fact, people always comment about the love of God, and obviously that is a huge attribute. But the one word that I'm pretty sure is used more in the Bible than love when describing God is holy. And holy can be tough. It is a love, but it's also tempered with justice. And so those are tough things to balance as men, but we've got to continue to try to do that. And again, I don't think you always have to be compassionate. Sometimes I love my son very much, but there are times I got to hold him accountable and tell him the truth. And I temper that as much as I can with love. But again, I think in society, gosh, we go too far one direction and people start labeling us as pretty bad guys, and I just think that's unfair a lot of times.
Well, Shawn, this is a topic for another program, but I know that your book has that. It has a lot of personal stories and anecdotes. You also talk about your WWE family and the friends you've made there and how you come into Christianity, change your life and your relationship. Again, this is Shawn Michaels with us today, author of a new book, Wrestling for My Life, available literally everywhere. Shawn, I want to thank you for being candid. I want to thank you for opening up about your faith and just being who you are. Thank you, and thank you for being with us today.
You bet. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, inspiring to say the least. Hey, coming up next, Pacific Bible College. It's been a while since we've had an update. We're going to talk to President Mike Robinson coming up next here on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Back and delighted to have in the studio with us today, Mike Robinson. He is the president of Pacific Bible College, and it's been a while, Mike, since we had you. Good to see you, man. How are you doing?
Nice to see you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, wow, Pacific Bible College. You got a lot going on, but the thing that really is kind of dominating things is the accreditation process. I can't even imagine how that's going and how difficult that's been. Tell us about it.
Yeah, we started about 4 years ago formally, and we selected the Association of Biblical Higher Education, which is one of 7 institutions that's recognized by the United States Department of Education. So they and the regional accrediting bodies that that are responsible for accrediting all of the state universities, et cetera, have access, and that's what the USDE depends on, so to speak, to govern the colleges and the universities. So we began working with them. They have a 3-tiered accreditation status or process, and the first step is application status, which we achieved in 2011. The second step is candidacy status, and then the final step is full accreditation. And we just in February received candidacy status, which is a huge accomplishment for us. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. And for those who don't know, Pacific Bible College, located right here in Medford, and you offer a full array of everything, right? Tell us about it.
We offer a couple of terminal degrees, so associate degrees in biblical studies, which is kind of our associate pastor degree, and then we have a degree in Christian counseling, so which is pretty unique actually in the United States. There's not a really full-blown associate's pragmatic, practical-based counseling program. That it's designed for the graduate to work under a parachurch organization such as a church or some sort of a ministry, but do real Christian counseling. In addition, now that we have candidacy status, it opens up a whole new level of both recognition by our peers, so the university systems will recognize our transfer credits now on a much higher level. We are now recognized by the United States Department of Education, so our students have access to FAFSA and federal funds for financial aid. And we're in the process of rewriting all of our articulation agreements with other institutions to kind of upgrade them and gain more transfer status with our credits. In addition,
I know that's been a long road.
Yeah, it has, and it's exciting.
All right, so the next level, what do you need to do that? And I know you have some kind of a fundraising event to help with that.
We've been generously blessed with a large donation which we have set up as a matching grant, and we've called it the Basileia Project, and which is kingdom in Greek, and we are trying to generate $50,000, of which it'll be matched dollar per dollar.
Wow.
And the goal is to raise $100,000 by the end of June. And in parallel with that, we are looking for our first paid administrative position, which would be a chief academic officer.
Wow.
So we've got 2 excellent candidates that we're actually in the process of interviewing right now, and they would be starting July 1st.
All right, so if people want to help you with the matching grant, what do they do?
They can go online to our website, pacificbible.com, or they can call us at 541-776-9942. Or they can email us at admissions@pacificbible.com, and we'll get them.
Let me encourage you to check this out. This school has evolved basically from nothing to really something now over the years, and it now has received this accreditation status, one more level to go, but where you are now is hugely significant. And I can't tell you the work that has gone in to get it to this position, which means all of you in the Southern Oregon area, you can go to Pacific Bible College, not only get a great education, but you have transferable credits. You now have the opportunity to get funding for that because of this status, and has now put PBC in a league that's highly coveted in the world of education. It really has, isn't it?
Well, and that's our goal, is to serve the Southern Oregon region with the Christian community with excellent Bible college, and that's what we're doing. We're growing. You've been a part of it since day one. You were one of the founders of it, and it's taken us a long time to get to here. But all of your vision, our vision, is God's meeting us, and He's opening doors.
Now, class offerings, day and night?
We have shifted primarily more to day classes, so we're much more of a kind of a standard conventional college now, in the sense that most of our classes are during the day. We still offer some night classes, but what we can do is we're very flexible. We still have all adjunct faculty. So if there's enough support to have a class at a specific time, we have the flexibility to do that. And then in addition, in the fall, we're going to be opening a new program, which is dual enrollment. So for the juniors and seniors, whether they're homeschool, whether they're in high school, right, we can begin to start their transcripts for college in that age, and save them tons of money. One of the big problems with college and universities is just a debt load, and with our low tuition and the ability to accelerate their path to a bachelor's degree, we can save them a lot of money. And
the other thing is this: now, so you're able to take high school students now.
In the fall, we're setting the program up right now.
And students that are maybe on track at another college, say Rogue Community, or even down at the university, you can walk alongside with them. Mm-hmm. That's pretty significant.
Well, and it's interesting with the candidacy status. Southern Oregon University, I'm going to meet with their director of admissions next week, I believe, mm-hmm, to start investigating direct transfer credits.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
So you'd be seen somewhat as humanities? From their perspective?
From their perspective, yes.
Yeah.
But they've taken, we've had students transfer credits already directly.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Well, Mike, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know that this has been a long, hard. You folks have no idea how hard this process is, because you had to have your finances in order, you had to have your staff in order, you had to have the curriculum in order, and they really scrutinize it.
They do. As you know.
Yeah, it's tough stuff, and to now reach this second level is significant. So let me encourage you, if you are an alumni or you're thinking about going, and those of you who've been thinking about perhaps attending a Bible college, you don't have to look outside the area. This one is right here, Pacific Bible College. And let me encourage you to pray about helping them with this matching fund. They have $50,000. If they can raise $50,000 by the end of June, so in the next couple of months or so, 3 or 4 months, that will really boost them in this process. And I can't tell you how significant that is. When you get to level 3, I mean, you're just like, whew, that's the top of the mountain, isn't it?
It is.
And so how long is that process?
Well, it's a peer review. The whole accreditation process is a peer review thing, and so we got audited and reviewed last October, and their primary assessment is this institution going to achieve full accreditation within 5 years? So they analyzed us and determined that we were. So we have reached a certain point of stability and robustness that they feel confident in saying we will meet accreditation in 5 years. So I anticipate it sooner than that. That's the longest it will take, but it'll probably take 3 years.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right, get a hold of them at pacificbible.com, probably the best way. Not only check out the curriculum, all the contact information is there. If you're feeling tugged by the Lord to help them with their matching grant, let me encourage you, this is money well invested in the kingdom work. I can't tell you how great it would be for you to invest into this project, because it will touch lives for generations to come. And check out a class, start with one. That's all it takes, huh?
Yeah.
I've seen students take one class and get bit by the bug, and they go all the way through. And that's what it's all about, pacificbible.com. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. Delighted to have our next guest with us. Been really anxious to talk about this particular topic, and we have with us today Dr. William Gairdner. He's a pretty busy guy. Of course, he loves athletics. He is an academic. He's a businessman. He writes a lot of books. He leaps tall buildings, outruns locomotives. But his latest book is the one I want to get into. It's called The Great Divide: Why Liberals and Conservatives Will Never Ever agree. And I think we all would agree that we are polarized in this country. And can we ever get along? I don't know. William, good to see you. How are you, my friend?
Thank you for having me. I'm just fine.
Nice. What prompted you to take this on?
Well, people often ask me, it's Perry, right?
Yes.
People often ask me why I write my books, and I say, well, it's almost like the books write me. You know, you sort of get pregnant with an idea and an inspiration, and you have to have the baby.
Well, I think a lot of people would agree that we're polarized in this country and we may never get together again. Are you seeing that?
Well, everybody's talking about the Great Divide in the USA at the surface. The reason I wrote this book, and I know the title sounds negative, but it's more provocative than negative. It's really an attempt on my part to get people to leave the surface emotions and arguments behind and start dealing with the real underlying ideological clashes. The image I use is of a man standing on the road on a beautiful afternoon, and suddenly there's a huge crack in the road, and he sees the buildings tumbling around him, and he says, "Oh my gosh, it's an earthquake." But of course, that's not the earthquake. It's the consequences of the earthquake. The real earthquake is the clash of geological forces below the ground that he can't see. Well, my book is about the clash of ideological forces that we can't see. What we're seeing is mostly the political and moral rubble at the surface. And instead of dealing with the real causes, which are invisible, as I say, and revealed, I hope, in this book, instead of dealing with those, we go to emotion. That's the go-to debate tactic these days is emotion, words like outrage. And my book is trying to reverse that, do whatever job I can to help reverse that and get the whole population back to having more dignified and statesman-like discussion.
Let me just stay there just for a moment. Do you think the debate has become too cynical? Now, I do a lot of talk radio and television, and I have become conscientious of the fact that it's just so cynical. Why listen?
Well, we're kind of saying the same thing, I guess, what you're saying and what my book is saying. You know, I often give public speeches, and inevitably someone will stand up and say, "Mr. Gairdner, I'm outraged by what you've been saying." And I look them right in the eye, and I say, "Well, you couldn't be more outraged than I am. Now, what's your point?" And it's like watching air come. It's like watching air come out of a balloon. If they have any brains, which most of them do, they say, I see. You can't deal with my emotions. You want a statement of fact or a firm opinion so that you can debate me in a dignified way. And I say, yeah, that's all I'm asking. I mean, I could be wrong. You could be right, but we can't know that if all you're doing is shouting and yelling at each other, you know?
Okay, I'll come back to that because I think you really hit a nerve, especially with me on that particular one. But you have identified 8 core topics that seem to be the Great Divide. You want to run us through those?
I will. There's the first part of the book is those core topics. They are the deeply ideological topics. For example, I say that liberals and conservatives at a fundamental level have a different conception of human nature. I'll just give you a quick example. That's number one. For example, most liberals conceive of themselves as progressives. They believe that human nature is malleable, and therefore human nature can be changed. It can be altered by public policy, taxation policies, and laws. And through that process that we can arrive at I suppose you'd call it the kingdom of heaven on earth. That's what they're aiming for. The true conservative says nonsense. Human nature is not that malleable. It's fundamentally fixed, universal, fairly constant, and that human beings are pretty much fallible, prone to evil if they're not surrounded by what Aristotle called their second nature, which is all the good things and customs and good manners they learn from parents and society. And so, these two concepts of human nature simply cannot be reconciled. That's why I say we'll never, ever agree on that. But what I'm arguing is let's at least talk about that and not about some policy struggle at the surface, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Issue in the book is the concept of reason. Liberals and conservatives differ on their whole notion of the definition and the use of human reason as well. Same with democracy, same with the notion of freedom. Same, and this is a big one, same with the notion of equality and inequality. That's a big one today. Everyone's talking about the 1% and all the rest of it more than they were in the past. And then morality and the self, the concept of God and religion. All these are dealt with in the first part of the book. And then in the last part, I have the three main issues, the social and the moral issues, where you see all these underlying tensions come together: abortion, euthanasia, and homosexuality and gay rights and all that. I think what your listeners would like to know is that at the end of every chapter, there's a little chart or a table in which they can find out where they stand. Am I more liberal? Am I more conservative? And a lot of people who read these charts, they come back to me or they call me and they say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I'm talking one story and I'm walking another.
Wow.
So the book's about self-discovery. Yeah, the book's about self-discovery too.
That's fascinating. Do you sense that the two-party system has worsened this problem? Because what I'm sensing now is that people on the right may have some belief systems that would fit in the left, but it doesn't allow them to express that, and vice versa.
Well, that's correct. What I call politics or party politics. In this book, again, I stress it's not about party politics. It's about political and moral philosophy. For example, in Canada as well as in the U.S., you'll often hear of a conservative party, which actually comes down with an extremely liberal or progressive type of law. And again, you'll see, say, the Democratic Party in your country sometimes will come up with a very conservative sort of law. So, that's all party politics and playing for power, for power and vote getting. And I don't want to be overly cruel or use language I shouldn't use on your program, but I think of party politics, I call it prostitution politics. There's four corners on the street, and the politician comes up looking for a wife on the other three corners, and he goes around and asks each one of them, what they're going to give him for his money, and each talk to him like, okay, here's how much money I want. I'm going to be your mistress for the night or whatever. But he says, the politician who says, no, I don't want a mistress, I want a wife, a spouse. That's a very different question, and he's going to meet a very different kind of woman, And what I call prostitution politics is this process we've all had way too much of, where politicians will say almost nothing when they talk, and when they do talk, that what they're doing is they're shaping their speech to get votes. Well, someone once said that the difference between a politician and a statesman is as follows: the politician's interested in the next election. In the next election, the statesman is interested in the next generation. My book is calling out to the people, first of all, to read it, secondly, to find out where they stand in each of these 14 issues, and then put out a call for more statesman-like behavior from those who represent us.
Very well said. Wow, this is big. How do you think, well, with the Great Divide, what happened to common sense? It just seems to have fallen through the cracks. I mean, everybody wants to claim it, but what happened to it?
Well, I do talk about that in the book too, but what we call common sense is a very useful term, is if in fact you have something in common. And I think what's happened over the last 50 or 60 years, and I talk about this a lot in the book, there's been a big change in the way we conceive of ordinary human life. For example, back then, we were more concerned about self-discipline and self-reliance, and then somehow there came about this change to the idea of, okay, it's not my fault, it's the fault of the system that I'm poor or I'm lazy or I'm behaving in stupid ways. In other words, we switched to self-gratification and self-expression as our main themes. And, back then we were interested in liberty under law, much less interested in what we call equality today, or forced equality, where this government gets involved in trying to change human nature and human life through policy. Back then we were interested in getting people to the starting line at the same time. Now we have countries, almost all the democracies have made this change, where they're trying to get people to the finish line together. And they're doing it through forced equality. Well, that gets the modern democracies. America's no different here from Canada or any other democracy. It gets them into a contradiction. How can you have maximum individual liberty, so to speak, under law, and also have maximum forced equality? You can't do it. So the way that these democracies resolved that contradiction was they split the body politic in two. We now have two parts of the body politic. We have the public part, which is kind of socialist. It's a very sloppy kind of socialism, but it's there big time. What people call statism these days, and over-regulation, over-taxation, and so on. And then the second part of the body is the physical part, our bodily and sexual freedoms. Well, everywhere we look, we see more democracy, but less freedom, with one exception. We have far more bodily and sexual freedoms than we ever had in all of human history. I can't think of any nation in the history of the world that ever had more of these things. Look at it. Pornography everywhere, gay rights, gay marriage, abortion rights, transgender rights. I mean, you name it. It's there. And I suspect, and I outline in my book, that this has been a kind of Faustian deal. The people have accepted the loss of their typical and traditional political and economic freedoms in exchange for more bodily and sexual freedoms. And that's how the modern democracies resolve their own contradiction.
Whoa. Are we meeting or heading towards some kind of a saturation point? I mean, some books will call it the fourth turning, the third turning. I don't know if you've looked into any of that, but in generational science, this thing could hit a wall and start over again.
Well, I think it's good. There's 4 unexpected truths that really came out of my study, and one of them I just outlined to you, which is this idea that we have more government and also more sexual freedom at the same time. I describe this 4th stage of modern democracy as libertarian socialism. That's what it is. We're living as both. We live publicly as socialists, and we live privately as sexual libertarians, if we want to. It's all there. But so that's the first big change, and that was a kind of entrapment, a kind of deal that we walked into half blind. The second big change is that because we have made a switch from democracies with a foundation based in liberty to democracies that have a foundation rooted in forced equality, I think we have put our civil societies under attack. Now, civil society is the zone of modern democracy, which has always been typified by voluntary associations, the family, churches, soccer clubs, charitable groups. I mean, millions of these kinds of freely created human organizations from which we always have gotten our social bonding. But when you have an egalitarian state at the top and individual rights emphasis at the bottom, civil society comes under attack. Egalitarian democracy is trying to get rid of all the privileges that come out of things like your family, your company, your church, and your soccer team. You have those rights and privileges in those groups, but I don't, and you don't have those privileges in my groups, you see. Well, egalitarian states can't stand the creation of that kind of private privilege. So they set about trying to destroy it, not by eliminating it, but by giving it to everybody without qualification. And they do that through welfare state handouts and public policies like that. So what are some of the effects of that? The third big deal, I think, is what I call moral rupture. All the modern democracies, with very few exceptions, have got themselves into big-time structural permanent debt. This is debt that they cannot pay off, and they can't raise taxes anymore, or they're going to have revolt. So what do? They start borrowing from unborn generations who aren't here to defend themselves against our own extravagant appetites. Well, this is taxation without representation. The unborn cannot defend themselves, so we're ripping them off. And not only that, because we're asking them to pay for stuff that we're consuming when they get here and when they start working, 20 years down the road. So I think that has caused an intergenerational moral rupture, and it's teaching the young to rip off the next generation too. They're seeing it as normal. Lastly, I would say I think all the democracies are becoming, or some have become, what I call tripartite states. Now, a tripartite state is one in which 1/3 of the people are producing the wealth and the jobs, 1/3 are employed by government at some level, and you have to include all full-time contracts with government in that. And lastly, the last section is the 1/3 who are receiving significant benefits from the state. Well, anybody can see the last 2 segments are always going to gang up on the first in the voting booth. It's like 2 wolves and a sheep deciding on what to have for dinner.
Fascinating. Let me take a quick break. We'll be right back. The book is entitled The Great Divide, and let me encourage you to check it out. There's a picture of it there on the screen. And where can they get the books, William?
It's pretty well stocked in all your Barnes & Noble stores, Books A Million, and of course Amazon, which you can go to as well.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and what a fascinating time with our guest today, William Gairdner. He's the author of a book called The Great Divide: Why Liberals and Conservatives Will Never, Ever Agree. And I think what he has done in his work here is really opened our brain to a lot of things that needed to be talked about and put on the table. And I can't wait to finish getting into the book. And William, again, thank you for your work. This is terrific because it hits on so many cylinders for me. A couple of remaining questions before I run out of time. One is talking about somewhat the moral rupture. Is liberalism a product of social evolution? I mean, where was liberalism? Where is it originally? Where did it come from? How did we go from honoring life to killing it? I mean, what happened?
Well, I should. This is the Christian station, so I should warn your readers. They better be sitting down when they read my chapter on, well, the last 3 chapters. One reviewer, can't remember who it was, he said they were ferocious. Well, they're ferocious because the book really takes aim at these issues in the deepest sense. And as I said, you better be sitting down because some of it's pretty hard-hitting stuff. But the arguments, I think, are very solid, and I try to give both sides. I show the readers the liberal arguing in defense of abortion and gay rights and euthanasia, and I show the conservative side arguing against them. And then, like I said, the reader is thoroughly versed in the arguments by the time they get to the quiz at the end of each chapter, and then they can review their own position. I should mention also, Perry, if you don't mind the flagrant self-promotion, I have a website. It's just my name, williamgairdner.com. And your listeners and viewers, rather, can go to my website and buy the book right from that website if they want, and they can also look at other material related to these topics.
That's William Gairdner, GAIRDNER.com. I want to come back to the rhetoric, so to speak. Now, I'm on the right. I'm a conservative, but I have become very concerned, William, about the tone, the disrespect, the anger, and the cynicism of our argument. I think we're losing on those bases.
Well, I think so too. And if I may be so bold, and again, if you don't mind the immodesty, I think this book is going to help with that issue because it tries to take the debates to a new plane, to a higher plane. Well, I should say it's not new. When I was a young man, you know, if an older gentleman, well, if my father or any of his friends asked me what I thought about some of these issues when I was, say, 20 years old, they would have expected a firm opinion, and they would have expected me to defend it in reasonably eloquent terms without a lot of muttering and stuttering and fishing around for words. What they would not have taken for a moment, they would have laughed me out of the room, would be if I had said what so many people say today, well, it's true for you, but it's not true for me. You know? I mean, that's one of the things that drove me to write this book. When someone said that to me, that's how I got started in the book, I would turn to them and I would say, well, it can't be true and false at the same time. One of us must be wrong. And this was an invitation to have a high debate on the issue. But instead, you know, they just go across the room and drink with someone else. So I thought something's wrong here. This society's falling apart.
All right. So is this a moral thing? Is it moral failure to have this divide?
I think, well, you'll see the morality part, besides the fact that I have a chapter on the different conceptions, liberal and conservative conceptions of morality, which is quite an interesting chapter. It does run all through the book. I mean, you know, I would say that morality sits on top of religion and politics sits on top of morality. If I'm right about that, then changes in the moral substructure of society are going to affect the changes in the political structure of society, which is like a superstructure sitting on top of it. Same with philosophies, Every philosophy has an underlying moral basis, which you can ferret out if you know how to do that. Morality is all through this book, and the changes in morality and in our self-conception. These are very serious matters. The book is not an academic book in the sense that it's not written for specialists. It's written for, the non-specialist, intelligent reader who has an interest in the topic. And I can't wait for it to take off, because I think it's very much needed in the discussion down there in the USA. And frankly, everywhere we live under what we call democracy. You asking earlier, by the way, about what happened to liberalism. Well, the book does a very brief 4-stage analysis. I talk about liberalism as having come to North America in 4 stages. The first one was what I call virtue liberalism. That was all the Christians and Puritans who came to the North American continent, both to Canada and to the USA, trying to escape the oppressions and the religious wars in Europe and the hierarchies and all that sort of thing. So they wanted to create a new kind of kingdom of, New Jerusalem here in America. And but that soon mutated as secularism raised its head, and we got into the sort of what I call the property and contract stage of liberalism, individual freedom stage under the philosophy of John Locke. And America really changed direction when that happened. And your Declaration of Independence, John Locke could have written that instead of Jefferson. Jefferson basically lifted most of those terms from the philosophy of John Locke. That served everybody well for about 150 years, and then what happened was all the leaders in America started to say, well, freedom is fine, but the fact that poor people and rich people are both free to sleep under a bridge is not really solving our problem, which is justice and equality. So we've got to start shifting everything. And so what I call property and contract liberalism, individual liberalism, switched over slowly to what you might call equality liberalism. And that's what got everybody into what I call the modern contradiction. How could you have maximum freedom as your basis and maximum forced equality as your basis? You could only do it splitting the body politic, and that's why we have what I now call libertarian socialism, where we've managed to bridge the gap, so to speak, by splitting it. We basically worship both these idols. The most common question we hear today is, what's the government going to do about it? That's something you never would have heard in the past. People would have spat on that idea.
No question about it. We're going to run out of time. Let me just plug it one more time. The Great Divide. Check it out at the bookstores, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and you can go to William's website. That's William Gairdner, Gairdner.com, and you can order it there and familiarize yourself with all of his other writings. William, one other quick question. I only got about a minute, so I apologize for that. It appears that this great divide that you've talked about in our society and our culture, quite frankly, has showed up in the American church. We're seeing the American church now divide over this.
Oh, it's been going on for a long time. When people ask me what religion I am, I say I'm a disappointed Anglican. The liberalism of the church in our time, at least up here in Canada, I know you have a lot of it down there too, it's just been quite surprising to see, quite shocking. And good heavens, in our politics in Canada here, we have some Roman Catholic politicians who are supporting abortion and things like that. And someone walks up and says, hey, you're a Roman Catholic. How can you support abortion? Well, I'm a Democrat first. That kind of thing. Well, I wouldn't vote for that. I wouldn't have voted for that guy.
I got to go. Thank you, William, for your time. Love to have you back, and we will do that. Thanks for your work, and thanks for doing this. I can't wait to finish reading it, and we'll have you back, okay? All right, nice to see you. All right.
Love to be with you.
All right, thank you. The Great Divide, check it out at the bookstores, and or you can go to his website. That's William D. Gairdner, Gairdner.com, and you can check it out there. We'll see you next time on Focus.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.